political point scoring by opposition parties. Well, they're just proving this very point, Madam Deputy Speaker. They are absolutely proving this very point, Madam Deputy Speaker. They would put that security at risk and play reckless games. The threats facing the future operation of Diego Garcia base are real, as the opposition well know, and the Diego Garcia Treaty remains the best means of securing the vital military base on the island. And we will continue, Madam Deputy Speaker, to work with partners, including the United States and Mauritius, to protect our national security and that of our allies. And I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Foreign Secretary Priti Patel.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And let me just start my remarks by saying that the Minister today has done the right thing by coming to the House to give this statement and to absolutely not be dragged here through an urgent question, but state the factual and accurate position now that this treaty is not going to go forward. But of course, Madam Deputy Speaker, he has been once again left carrying the can for the Prime Minister's epic failure of statecraft. Labour's Chagos surrender has been wrong from the start. And instead of making excuses, the right thing to do would have been to tear up this dreadful treaty and commit to keeping Chagos British. The news that the ratification of this treaty is now done and dusted is a humiliation for the Prime Minister and this government. And let's be clear, this Labour surrender treaty is Labour's mess. And as the House knows, within days of coming to office, the Prime Minister's top foreign policy priority was to exceed the wishes of his left-wing lawyer friends and surrender the Chagos Island at an enormous cost to British taxpayers. He met the Mauritian Prime Minister, appointed Jonathan Powell to conclude negotiations, and rushed and blundered into this treaty. They inexplicably announced it to the world just before Mauritius went to an election. And then when the Mauritian government that they agreed to deal with got kicked out, the new Mauritian government, guess what, demanded more concessions from Britain. And Labour rolled over and got eaten for breakfast. They put one of our most important defence and security assets at risk. They compromised the special relationship with the United States. They ignored and betrayed the wishes of the Chagosian community. And they were prepared to hand over £35 billion of taxpayers' money to lease back a land that we own. And then they went ahead with the deal before receiving the critical exchange of notes from the United States. And having been to the United States myself recently, I'm not in the least surprised that the administration has stopped to stop this deal. They can see what we have been saying for a long while. And it's the Conservatives who have opposed this Labour deal at every turn. And while Labour has spectacularly failed to defend British sovereignty, and Reform have gone from suggesting that we sell the islands to the US to suggesting that we give it to the Maldives, the Conservative Party has been effectively scrutinising and opposing this surrender every step of the way to make sure that we keep Chagos British and we protect our sovereignty and our taxpayers. It's Conservatives who have exposed the full £35 billion costs of this deal. It's Conservatives who dismantled Labour's outrageous and offensive narrative that those who oppose the Chagos surrender are siding with British adversaries and instead brought forward the major security concerns about this deal and exposed the fact that Mauritius is deepening partnerships with Russia, China and Iran. It's Conservatives that have been pressing the government for months on its totally inadequate answers about why the anti-nuclear Pendelaba Treaty would apply to Diego Garcia. And it's Conservatives who have been supporting the Chagosians every step of the way and giving them a voice and speaking up for them. Our questions and debates in this House and in the other place have led Labour to account and forced them now into this position today. But while this surrender and this whole process now has been ripped up, I do want to ask the Minister some fundamental questions. The Mauritian government has announced that the UK delegation is going to Mauritius later this month. Will the Minister tell us who is going and now what is the purpose? What will they be negotiating? Is there a new timetable? What is actually going to happen? We also know that Mauritius has budgeted to receive the surrender payments from the British government. So can the Minister confirm that no payments will be made to Mauritius as a result of what he has announced today? And will the Labour government commit to spending the money they were planning to ship to Mauritius on boosting defence spending at this critical time, which is exactly what the British taxpayer wants, the purpose for which should now be clearly allocated to this fundamental resource? Can he confirm in no uncertain terms that for as long as the US opposes this deal, Labour will not seek in any way to reinstate this. And on the Chagosians, if the islands stay British, is it the government's intention to look at resettlement options? And will he rule out any new legislation coming forward next session, even if it isn't in the King's Speech, so that the surrender treaty cannot become operable? The only bill that the government should be taking forward now in the next session is my original bill to make sure that Chagos remains British.
Yeah. Minister.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I will start with a thanks to the Honourable Lady. She's rightly scrutinised many different aspects of this over many, many months, and I have come dutifully to answer many of those questions. I've met with her privately, and this has been scrutinised by many committees, and it was the right thing to do to update the House today on this development, and I'm glad that she acknowledges that point. Of course, it's not for government to simply choose easy paths, it's to choose the right path. And it's to choose the path that's in the interests of Britain and our national security and that of our allies. And fundamentally, at the heart of this, Madam Deputy Speaker, is a question. The opposition know that there is a huge challenge here. They knew that there was a problem, and that's why they started this process. And throughout this, through all the exchanges we've had, they have never been able to answer that simple question. And I cannot recall a time, Madam Deputy Speaker, when we have seen so much misinformation and, quite frankly, negligent disregard for the national interests and security of the British people. And it's regrettable that the official opposition, indeed the party opposite, to only see one of their members has turned up today, have been at the heart of this. And they will say, of course, oh, this is just politics and we in the government should be thick-skinned. But quite frankly, the British public deserve better. Indeed, the national interest is what drives this government and our national security, as they well knew, which is why they started the process. So we've seen, frankly, ludicrous disinformation about the operations of the base, about the genuine threats it faced, about the security provisions in the treaty, which of course we strengthened, about the costs. No matter how often they give these false figures about the costs, it doesn't make them any more accurate. And of course about the views of Chagosians, which I accept are wide and varied, but they conveniently always ignore the views of significant numbers of Chagosian communities and groups who feel very differently about this treaty and who have supported it since the start, and indeed about the protection of the environment. And the fact is, Madam Deputy Speaker, the opposition know the reality. They operate in a state of convenient amnesia. They knew the jeopardy facing the base. They knew that they presided over 11 rounds of negotiations. They published it in ministerial statements, in records of meetings with the Mauritian Prime Minister, and they know too that the treaty signed by this government was born of their policy choices and their negotiation mandates. So, as ever, Madam Deputy Speaker, the opposition cannot run fast enough away from their record in government when it suits tiresome political politicking. The British people are not fooled. They can see the hypocrisy and they deserve better.
Dr. Scott Arthur.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. So I do want to thank the Minister for the work he's done over many months working with our allies on this issue to reach agreement in our national interest and theirs. He's remained consistent throughout on this issue and he's given us many updates on this issue. I wish I could say the same about the opposition. Their short memory, their flip-flopping and their complete disregard for national security is very similar to the position they've got themselves into with Iran. Very, very similar. They're laughing in the face of real threats to our national security. But can the Minister explain? I'm actually quite concerned because it seems to me that the status quo isn't in our national interest. And without a treaty, what does that mean for the long-term access to this base for ourselves and also for our allies?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, my honourable friend sets out the fundamental issue here, which of course is the risks to the operation of the base, which the opposition knew all along. It's why they started this process, and which we have responded to with this treaty that protects our security and that of our allies. I'm not going to speculate about the coming of those risks, but we know that we need to put this on a secure footing. We know that the treaty was the best way to do that. We know that this was agreed under 2 administrations across the United States in an interagency process. We continue to believe that it is the right way forward, and we will announce our business in the usual way.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Dr Al Pinkerton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I genuinely thank the Minister for the statement today, for the advance sight of the statement, and for his long engagement with me on these issues. The process for negotiating this treaty has been, I'm sorry to say, utterly shambolic, from its beginning under the previous government to its demise under this one. As the government shelves a gallant gentleman from a sedentary position says, "Why did we finish it?" I'm sorry to tell him they didn't. There is no evidence at all. There is no evidence at all that this statement was finished by the previous government. But as this government shelves this legislation, it must now reckon with the litany of failures that have plagued this process. Specifically, its inability to secure financial legal guarantees, fundamental legal guarantees from the US through the necessary exchange of letters. Its reluctance to adopt measures which would enable genuine parliamentary scrutiny over the planned vast sums of money that would be sent to the government of Mauritius. And its willful reluctance to work with or to secure the rights of Chagosians, including but not limited to the right of return to the Chagos Islands. Aside from the government's apparent ignorance of the legal prerequisites for the passage of this treaty, the most objectionable aspect of this process has been the woeful engagement with the Chagosian community. The British state has long denied Chagosians a meaningful say in their own future, and the provisions of this treaty shamefully failed again to affirm those rights. So if this treaty ever does return to this House, the government would do well to observe and understand the amendments submitted by the Liberal Democrats in the other place, securing genuine rights for Chagosians and helping to buck the historic trend of that community being left out of the decisions about its own future. But I only have one very simple question for the Minister. Given that the government has now abandoned its proposed deal with Mauritius over the Chagos Islands, can the Foreign Secretary set out what this means in practice for the long-promised right of return for Chagosians? Will the government now commit to supporting resettlement under continued UK sovereignty? And if so, how does he assess the implications of that return for the evidential and legal basis underpinning the 2019 ICJ advisory opinion? In conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, British citizens physically located on the islands would constitute a resident population who would be very difficult to remove.
Order. Minister.
Well, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank him for his comments and his continued engagement in good faith throughout this process, and I can assure him that in due course we will obviously return to the issues that he and I and his honourable and right honourable colleagues were discussing with us and the concerns they expressed in amendments in this place and indeed in the other House, and I can absolutely assure him of that. But I have to, of course, reject his assumption that this is somehow met with demise. It's not been abandoned, and we have always been clear about the need to have the agreement on the US-UK exchange of notes. Indeed, I refer him to the comments of my honourable friend in the other place on the 18th of November, where Baroness Chapman said very clearly, and I quote, "Before the UK can ratify the treaty, we will need to do the following: pass both primary and secondary legislation, update the UK-US exchange of notes, and put in place agreements on the environment, maritime security and migration." We have been always clear about the processes that needed to be followed in parallel here. It's regrettable to us that obviously there has been a delay, that we've run out of time in this parliamentary session, but the facts have not changed in the need for this treaty or indeed the need for the different processes and legal provisions to be brought in place. He rightly raises the concerns about the Chagosians, and he and I have discussed these on a number of occasions. Of course, we have engaged extensively with Chagosian communities. There are a range of views in the community. There will be many Chagosians who will be deeply disappointed by this delay in the treaty, not least for the very reason that he refers to, which is that we believe that this is the best route under Mauritius's guidance to lead to resettlement. And of course, I want to re-emphasise our commitment to restarting at an appropriate time those heritage visits that are so important. He'll understand why the current situation does not allow that to take place, but we will obviously seek to do that at the earliest opportunity. We know how important it is, particularly for those heritage reasons, to do so.
Sir Ian Duncan-Smith.
Mr. Speaker, I think always the test of a bad bit of legislation is when you see carte blanche Henry VIII powers inside a very thin and flimsy piece of legislation, and granting, therefore, the government the right to do anything it liked with the bill, even after it had passed. So that made it a dog of a bill. But now the government's come to either pause it or whatever they call it, return it or U-turn it. Can I just take the government back, the right honourable gentleman, back to the statement he made about the Chagosians? Because right at the heart of this lies their rights over this. And I will say that he talked about them wanting to come to some conclusion about their ability to return to the islands. So could you perhaps answer me, within all of that, why then, when the Supreme Court's ruling that Section 9 of the 2004 order in Council that barred the right of abode to Chagosians was illegal, why have they then mounted an appeal against that to ensure that they are illegal if they go to their islands? Does he think the Chagosians have no right to go to the islands, or they do have a right? Which is it, if he could answer?
Minister.
Well, he's clearly familiar with the history on this. He'll know the judgments in the courts of England and Wales on this matter on the right of abode. I'm not going to comment on ongoing legal proceedings. Safe to say that we were disappointed by the position that was taken, and our understanding is that Biota are appealing that judgment, and we have taken an interest in that matter.